Hi, Jeremy Crow here. This is the 6th episode of the Esoteric Insomniacs live stream. Can't believe I've done 6 of these already, or 5, I guess. This would be my. Can't believe I'm doing the 6th one right now. Yeah, so this is a place for us to discuss whatever we feel like discussing. And one of the reasons I do this in the middle of the night, where I'm, it's in the middle of the night, but I do this because I want to also reach people who are in different time zones, to give an opportunity for you guys to jump into a live stream as well. Because I do these during the day sometimes, in the middle of the day usually, and then sometimes in the middle of the night. So usually around 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Somewhere around there is usually when I do these live streams. So I like to be able to reach different time zones with that. So you might not be an insomniac, you might just be in the middle of your day. I see we have got a couple people on here already. If there's anything in particular you want to talk about, then definitely send me a message here in the live chat, and I'll read it out and we can discuss it. Something that I've been looking into a lot lately has been medicinal mushrooms. So there are a ton of mushrooms that are insanely good for you. And, you know, like, of course, the more controversial, I guess, slightly topic would be the psychedelic mushrooms, right? Microdosing has become mainstream. You know, people taking psilocybin mushrooms that contains psilocybin, and but taking a dose that is below the threshold of conscious awareness, or maybe just slightly aware of the effect. It's not tripping. It's not tripping on the mushrooms. It's just taking a little bit, and it has an effect. And it can be a very therapeutic effect. A lot of people have said that they have taken magic mushrooms. I'll just use the slang term, or shrooms. People have taken shrooms and have cured their addiction, have cured their depression, and other people that have just kind of changed their lives because of it. You know, it could be a very transformative thing. Now, some of those experiences would be from taking a large dose, or a regular trip dose, or recreational dose, you might call it. But what's become kind of mainstream now is microdosing. Now, just so you're aware, not a lot of places have psilocybin mushrooms legal. So I do not recommend taking anything that is illegal, because, you know, the consequences are potentially huge, and it's not really worth the risk necessarily, unless you want to perhaps engage in some form of civil disobedience in order to try and change the law as a part of a protest or something like that. But I don't recommend you breaking the law. It's not something I can do on this channel, or, you know, on YouTube in general. You can't encourage people to break the law. But it is an interesting field of study, and some people have helped their PTSD from it. And it's just pretty incredible, some of the studies that are coming out on psilocybin. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is how it creates connections between parts of the brain that normally don't really communicate, barely communicate with certain parts of the brain. So certain parts of the brain just don't talk to other parts of the brain very much at all. But when you have psilocybin in your system, they do. And that I find very fascinating, because I think that part of what occult work does, part of what esotericism is you're kind of tricking your brain into making connections between parts that don't normally connect. And I'm kind of reminded of a very famous quote from H.P. Lovecraft. It was from his Call of Cthulhu short story. I think it's right at the beginning, actually. And he says something along the lines of, the most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate its contents. And it's like, then he goes on to say that if we were able to correlate the contents of our mind, then we would come to realizations about things that would freak us the fuck out, basically. He says something like that we would run screaming back into the comfort of another dark age, because that the truths that we would come to recognize would be so difficult to accept that we would flee from it, and become ignorant intentionally in order to kind of not go insane. And I think that that's really interesting, that a lot of truths are very painful. And it's funny, I saw a meme recently online. It's probably on Instagram or something, but the what was it? Oh yeah, the line was, "The truth shall set you free, but it's gonna hurt like a motherfucker first." And I think that there's definitely some truth to that, because I find that there are a lot of people out there that would prefer a comforting delusion to a painful truth. They don't want to hear the truth, and they'd rather just kind of be ignorant and the blissful ignorance, right? Like they say, ignorance is bliss. I actually met a woman. I was in between jobs, so I got something that was kind of in my field. My field is telecom, and I had been laid off from one job. There was an economic downturn, and I had gone to a new position, and I was the new guy in that new position, even though I had been with the company for a long time. And the company in question here, I'm not going to name names, but the company in question that laid me off, they have a history of laying people off once they got to a certain number of years. And I was kind of one of those people that ended up getting laid off, and the excuse was that they were reducing the headcount in the new department, which is irrelevant. But I was in between jobs, and I was at this call center for a few months. What was it, like 5 months or something like that? I worked there, and it was really interesting. But I don't normally deal with the customer side of things in telecom. I'm more of a techie. But there was a lot of the people there ended up finding out that I was a Luciferian. And it was in a small town, actually, where the call center was. And so a lot of those people were very, very religious Christian people. And the one woman in particular, she was very devout. And she was shocked, just completely shocked that I was a Luciferian, especially because she had gotten to know me over a course of about a month or so, and she didn't associate my personality with someone that she would think of as a Luciferian. In her mind, a Luciferian is a very evil person, right? So she was extremely curious, and she kept asking me all these questions. And one of the questions she asked me was, well, what do you think happens when you die? And I said, well, I mean, we don't know. Nobody really knows, you know. For all we know, nothing could happen, right? There could be nothing when you die. I don't, you know, like that's one possibility. And that I think it's a valid possibility, right? And I was, you know, that was the first possibility I listed off. It isn't necessarily what I think is probably the case, but I said, well, maybe nothing, you know, that's one possibility. And she goes, well, I don't know, that's not very comforting. And I said, well, that tells you the difference between you and me. You are looking for something that's comforting. I'm looking for the truth, you know? And that kind of, she, you know, reeled her mind. She was like, whoa, okay, you know? And then she had to think about that for a while. And I thought that was really revealing, you know, for her to say that. Miss B says hi. Hello. Thanks for stopping by this Carstream, as I like to call it. Hail Satan says, hi, great to see you, brother. Thank you very much. Thanks for the greetings. Hi to you too. Thanks for stopping by to this live stream. Did you guys have anything in particular you wanted to talk about? Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of ramble about various different thoughts that enter my head. You know, just following whatever tangent, you know, where it leads me. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting revelation, you know, that she revealed something about herself, and that was the fact that she was seeking a comforting story rather than trying to uncover the truth. And that was, you know, that's my gig, you know, that's my thing. My jam, you know, is looking for the truth and not what's comforting, even if that truth is very painful, you know, and it's something that might take years to integrate, you know, fully, because it's so difficult to process. But that's really where the growth is in accepting difficult truths. And, you know, that's, I think, part of why I'm fascinated with the darker side of life and nature and human nature as well. Like, I'll go on binges of true crime binges where I'll be consuming a lot of true crime documentaries, and it just really fascinates me the way people's minds work and what drives people to engage in such criminal behaviors, you know, that's extreme, like ending another person's life, you know. What drives a person to do that, and how they react to when they've done it, you know. What do they do afterwards? You know, that fascinates me. Just what does a person do after they've killed somebody? What are the different types of things that different personality types end up doing? You know, there are people who, they don't care about getting caught. They'll own right up to it. They'll be like, oh yeah, he deserved it, you know, or whatever. Oh yeah, of course, yeah, I killed him. Of course, I just, you know, he deserved it. But, you know, do whatever you want. Like with me, you know, like I guess I'll go to jail. And then that's it, you know. They just own up to it, and they're just like, seem to be fine with it. They're like, oh yeah. Some people are like that. And other people, of course, try and hide it and try and cover it up, and some people think that they're real smart. And then they end up doing the stupidest things. But okay, I've got another question here, or not question, a statement, or whatever you want to call it, a comment. Secret Knowledge 75 says, hey Jeremy, can you say a couple of sentences about receiving gnosis through meditation? Thank you. Okay, well, meditation it means a lot of different things to different people. So let's define that first. So meditation to me is a form of mental discipline that I like to refer to as what's the word that I use? Concentration. So it's basically concentration practice, being able to hold a certain concept in your mind without distraction. So a typical form of meditation will involve having some sort of focus, a visual focus, or it could be your breath. So you are aware. It's awareness. It's like mindful awareness is concentrating on mindful awareness is the most common form of meditation. So what that means is essentially you will, let's say your breath, you will focus on the fact that you are breathing. That's it. You just sit there quietly and you focus on the fact that you are breathing. And you don't try and analyze it. You don't try and be like, oh, wow, I'm breathing really fast, or I'm breathing really slow, or you don't try and control the way you're breathing. You just allow yourself to breathe, and you're just aware of the fact that you're breathing. And if you start to analyze it, or you start to think of something else completely different, then you recognize the fact that you've deviated from that focus, and you bring your attention back to your breath. And you just sit there with the awareness of the fact that you're breathing. You're just sitting there in the present moment, and that's it. And if some kind of vision comes to you, what I would recommend is don't be bothered by it. Just gently bring your awareness back to your breath. You know, a lot of people get hung up on, insights or visions or whatever that end up coming to them during meditation. And that's not the purpose of meditation. The purpose of meditation is to hone your mental discipline in the area of awareness of the present moment and being in the now and not allowing your mind to deviate. Some sort of vision or revelation or whatever that you have during a meditation is a deviation from that being in the present moment, just being aware of your breath. And there's actually an old story about this where this student, Buddhist, I guess, might as well say, student was practicing meditation, and he was doing hours and hours a day, and then he was meditating, and then suddenly he finds himself drawn up into a non-physical experience where he traveled to the Buddha realm, and he spoke with one of the Buddhas there, who gave him all this knowledge and teachings and gave him special teachings. And then he came back to his self, and he went and he ran to his master, and he said, Master, I just had this amazing vision during my meditation session. And then before he could even start to describe it, the master said, okay, just don't let it bother you. Just bring your attention back to your breath. And I think that it's a very powerful lesson, because meditation is not for inducing visions. It's not for achieving revelations. It's a form of mental discipline. It's a practice that you're using to hone your mind to be able to enter a specific type of focus, a specific type of lucidity. And it's not for gaining gnosis. Maybe you will, but it's kind of a deviation from the practice to do that. Now, there are other forms of mental discipline that some people call meditation, like contemplation. Contemplation practice is a mental discipline that you will basically focus on something. Usually it won't be your breath. It'll be something more esoteric, like a sigil or a symbol or an image of the Buddha or whatever. Even just a simple shape, like a square or whatever, just an image of something like that, or a letter. You know, the mind. You know, the sky's the limit, right? So you pick some kind of focus, and then you allow your mind to, you know, pop up ideas regarding it. Oh, Miss B, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. It really helps out the channel and helps support what I do here. Really appreciate that, Miss B. Thank you. Hail Satan says, I have been watching your videos for 8 years. Absolutely fantastic. Cheers, brother. Thank you very much, Hail Satan. I appreciate that. So this other form of meditation or mental discipline, you know, is the contemplation, and you will allow your mind to come up with related concepts that are related to the focus, and then you will follow that along on a thread of thought. So one thought feeds the next thought in a thread, right? And if you find yourself deviating off in some way that is completely unrelated or not very productive, in a sense, what you do is you follow back that train of thought back to where you deviated, and then you continue back on again. So that helps you think through things in a logical progression without getting too distracted by competing thoughts. But it does allow you to contemplate something, to analyze something, and it does allow you to gain a greater understanding of the thing that you're focusing on. It could be a tarot card, and that's one way to really get into understanding your deck. Understanding each card in the tarot is to do a contemplation practice on each card. Allow yourself to come up with related ideas and to let those ideas feed on each other. But if, like I said, if you do get distracted from that train of thought, you backtrack your ideas until you get back to where you deviated, and then you go forward again from there. And you see how long you can keep a train of thought going on that same line of thought, in a sense. And then if it kind of dries out, then you just go right back to the beginning again. You're like, okay, well, let me look at this thing again with fresh eyes. And you start again. You create another train of thought. And if you start to deviate from it, like I said, you backtrack back to that point. It helps your mind really practice thinking in different ways. So those are two different types of mental discipline that you can practice, and both are called meditation, but usually the concentration, where you're not analyzing it, usually when people say meditation, they mean that is the classic form of meditation. But yeah, if you wanted gnosis on something, I would refer you to, I would recommend you to do the more contemplative form of mental discipline for that specific purpose. But both are useful. Both are useful for you to practice thinking in certain ways and having more disciplined mental processes, really. Petter L. Berger says, I've had lucid dreams during meditation. Okay, well, I'm curious to know what kind of meditation you're doing, because if you're doing the classic form of meditation where you are just aware and not allowing your mind to deviate, then having a lucid dream during a meditation is actually kind of a failure, in a sense, that you've allowed yourself to get distracted from the here and now, the immediate present, you know. And while it's very cool, you know, to have a lucid dream, and that would be a very cool experience to have, and I'm not trying to downplay that. That's a lucid dream experience is incredible, and it can be very transformative, but it's not something that you want your meditations to produce. So if you're doing meditation, you want to produce mental discipline. You don't want to produce visions and things like that, because that's completely against the whole point of meditation. You're kind of, in a sense, escaping from the current physical here and now that you're experiencing if you go off into some kind of vision. You know what I mean? So Ethan Ross says, who said anything about not deviating during meditation? Present is body, present is lucid dream. What is the difference in potential for meditativeness? Well, lots of people have said it. I just said it, for example. Not deviating during meditation, that's like the whole point of meditation, is to not deviate from being aware. Yes, you can have like a walking meditation or something like that, where you walk, you're doing some sort of activity, and you're mindful, you're having mindful awareness of what you're doing, and that is a form of meditation. But the standard, typical, when, like I said when I first started talking about this, there are so many different definitions of meditation that, you know, to even answer that question, I had to settle on a definition of what meditation meant to even answer that question, because so many people use the word meditation to mean different things. So yeah, there's a form of meditation that you could do where you're just basically in the moment and being aware of whatever's going on around you, and not letting your mind wander, in a sense. And you could do that during a lucid dream, for sure. And you could do that while you're awake. You could be doing things. You could drive your car and do it, but that's a different thing. That's more mindfulness. Some people call it mindful meditation or mindfulness meditation, but I think that really confuses people, because the word meditation gets thrown around so much for so many different things. Nobody knows what the heck meditation is anymore. You say, oh, I meditate. That could just mean you zone out to music for half an hour and you come back to yourself. And you're like, oh, half an hour's passed? I didn't even realize. That is not even close to the standard, typical, meditation that most people are talking about. Ethan says, you are not leaving meditation just because you experience other things. Is experience ever really empty? I don't know, man. Like I said, that's more mindfulness. It's not, meditation. If your mind is going all over the place, then that's not, like, maybe, like, if you're not bringing your awareness back to the present moment or whatever, then it's not meditation. I don't know what else to say. Maybe you have a different definition of meditation than me, and if so, then we're talking about different things, and we're arguing over semantics in that sense. So kind of feel like this line of conversation is, I don't really know. Like, when you say the word meditation, it really depends on what you mean. What is useful about being bound to sitting still? Ethan says. Well, like I said, it's a form of training your mind to be more disciplined. That's what it is. It's not something you're trying to be in 100% of the time. It's a practice, you know. It's not a lifestyle. You don't have a meditation lifestyle where you're trying to just sit still and be mind, you know, and not let your mind wander 100% of the time. It's a practice to learn to achieve that form of mental discipline. That's all. It's a useful thing to be able to do, but it's not the be all end all, and it's not something that you necessarily want to be in 100% of the time. It's just a mental discipline practice. So that's what's useful about it, is that you can train your mind to be more disciplined in certain ways. So you admit the goal has nothing to do with state of consciousness, LOL. I mean, yeah, you can be in a lucid dream and practice that form of mental discipline. You know, that some people say that it's even more effective if you do it within a lucid dream. So yeah, the two aren't mutually exclusive. I'm just saying, if you're doing a meditation practice and you start, you know, having visions and stuff, you know, might not be the type of meditation that I'm thinking of. So, what else should we talk about? You know, I feel like we've gotten to a bit of a dead end on that topic because of semantics and differing definitions. But we were talking about meditation, or sorry, about altered states, including chemically induced altered states. Ethan has something else to say here. Experience seeking can be a problem, but aversion can be just as much of a problem. Well, I'm not saying that it's a thing that you're going to be doing 100% of the time. It's not, you know, you're not trying to be in that meditative state 100% of the time. It's just a mental discipline that you're practicing for that period of time that you've set out to do your meditation for. Like, say, 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is that you're doing your practice for. You're practicing mental discipline for that 30 minutes. You know, it's not aversion. It's training. It's training your mind to be able to think in a certain way when you want to think in that certain way. It's a useful state to be able to enter if you want to. It's a useful form of thinking. Petter says, I think your definition is the right one. Sometimes my meditation turns into self-hypnosis. Now, for me, the word self-hypnosis means being able to change your state to whatever state you are trying to achieve. So, like, normal waking consciousness is usually what they refer to as the beta state, and that's a reference to the brainwave frequency band, you could call it. And a light trance state would be referred to as an alpha state. And there's other ones. There's, you know, delta and theta, you know, and I feel like self-hypnosis is the ability to change what brainwave state that you're in at any given time for whatever purposes you're trying to achieve, you know. But I feel like that's the technology. Self-hypnosis is the technology used to be able to enter into altered states at will. And often it will include giving yourself post-hypnotic suggestions during that. Ethan said you told someone they were failing, but you were the one being semantic. Okay, whatever that means. Secret Knowledge 75, self-hypnosis for personal transformation, is a very interesting topic. Yeah, I mean, one thing that you can do with self hypnosis is that you can enter into a state that um, the sorry, yeah, being able to enter into a state where you're able to kind of modify your own mental programming more easily, in a sense. So just imagine somebody who has thought and acted and behaved in a certain manner for, let's say, a year. They've been doing it for a year, and they've pretty much ingrained that way of being. Um, Through self hypnosis, you can enter into a more suggestible state and give yourself a post hypnotic suggestion, which will help you break through that conditioning um, more easily, more readily than you won't necessarily have to spend a year ingraining a new habit, you know? So it's a way to kind of kickstart or kind of jumpstart, I should say, a transformation. So yeah, I fully agree with you on that. Let's see. Ethan Ross said they wanted to measure my gamma waves, so they told me meditate. I said, what is that? Just sitting still? They said, okay, just do nothing. So I sat there and did nothing, and they asked me if I had died. That's funny. Hail Satan says, what are your favorite bands? Good question. I've got, I listen to different music. I don't listen to bands as much as I used to. I listen to more like producers and artists that are more like not necessarily bands, like Stromae. I've been listening to a lot. That's a French artist. He doesn't really produce too much lately, but he's got some really great music. It's kind of dancey with lyrics mostly, and it's French. It's in French, and I think he's Belgian, and he speaks French. French is his first language, and he sings in French. The lyrics are in French. It's pretty cool, and I just think he's a really great artist. I wish he would put out more content. He did something recently with, it wasn't that long ago, with, what is his name, Orelsan, another French artist who's more of a kind of a rapper, kind of, and that one was pretty cool. That was a cool collaboration. I like Subfocus. I like, I like a lot of classic stuff too. Like, one of my favorite bands used to be Nine Inch Nails. Not as much anymore, but a lot of that stuff I still listen to. Miss B says, I've been listening to a lot of Peter Gundry recently. Helps with meditation. I'm not aware of that artist. Maybe I'll check it out. Yeah, so I've got roughly about 15 minutes left to do to field your questions, or just to ramble on about whatever happens to be running through my head at the time. This is more like that contemplative practice rather than the concentration practice. More like a free flowing stream of consciousness, in a sense. But yeah, music is very powerful, and I find like it affects you on a different level. There are some people that believe that before humans were verbal, before we had a regular spoken language, the humans sang kind of like birds, will have their different songs that they'll use to like attract a mate or whatever, or announce danger to their other bird friends. But that maybe humans were singing, and then eventually that turned into a more formalized kind of language, spoken language. And I think that's a really interesting concept, that maybe we sang before we spoke. And it goes to show like how powerful music can be to us, and how it's like a magic spell. It can, they say music soothes the savage beast, and I think that it can soothe the beast within as well, and it can stir it up as well. It can do both. And I find I lost my train of thought there. I better do more meditation, mental discipline type practices. Although it is almost 4 a.m. So, Secret Knowledge 75 says, do you use any energy work in your practice? Prana or chi, whatever? Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like most esoteric practices have some form of chi, or whatever you want to call it, breath work, qigong or qigong. I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced exactly, but something along those lines, means breath practice. And they say the energy follows the breath, and sometimes they say the energy follows the imagination. And prana, that's a word that means both life and breath, and even kind of spirit, I believe it means as well. It's kind of like the word ruach, which is a Hebrew word that means essentially the same thing. And yeah, I definitely utilize that. I take a lot of inspiration from Taoist internal alchemy practices, including practices where you cycle the energy through different energy channels in your body, your energy body, and your physical body, and you'll raise energy and you'll cycle it through your body in different ways, and breath is incredibly important in that process. So yes, absolutely. On a regular basis, I utilize energy work. What about you guys? Do you guys do any kind of chi practice or energy work in your practice? Secret Knowledge 75, do you? I assume that 75 is a reference to Lucifer. Is that right? You do. You do. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. It's, very pervasive, and it's ubiquitous among esoteric practices the world over. So yeah, it would be hard to do esoteric stuff without involving any kind of prana or chi in some way. Petter says karate, qigong, and aikido. Yeah, actually, my father knows aikido, and he actually used to teach it too. He's taught me a few things. For aikido, it's interesting. It's a very interesting form of martial arts. Hail Satan says, do you listen to black metal or dark ambient ritual music? A little bit, not so much, not a ton. I'm not a huge fan of it. I like a lot of the messages behind some of this stuff, but I don't necessarily listen to it for pleasure all that much. I like to listen to music where I can understand the lyrics, or they're discernible in some way. And I find that a lot of black metal, you can't really understand what they're saying. They're just kind of screaming it. Dark ambient, a little more. There's one artist that puts out really dark electronic music, and it's not necessarily ritual music, but I find it very evocative and powerful. And that would be Dom and Roland is the name of the artist, and it's kind of like a joke. His name is a little bit of a joke because his name is Dom, and then a lot of these producers, electronic music producers, will have like a team, and they'll call themselves this and that, like Chase and Status, you know, or whatever, right? And so he said Dom and Roland would be like basically his music equipment. So he's partnered with his music equipment in a sense. But yeah, Dom and Roland is an electronic producer, artist that puts out some really dark electronic music that I find very powerful. Miss B says, as a Luciferian, what is your daily practice? I don't have a daily practice. You know, that might shock some people, but I don't do like a ritual every single day. My daily practice, I mean, in a sense, I do have a daily practice in the sense that I will, I mean, I used to have a practice where every day I would do ritual, and sometimes multiple times in a day. Even up to like 5 times a day I would do ritual, and sometimes it would just be like a 1-minute ritual where I would do like an adoration, let's say. At certain time of the day I would stop and I would do like an adoration, like the thelemic ones. But now I try and, you know, act consciously in my life, for example. But if I was to have any kind of daily practice, I would probably say that it's state testing. So trying to be aware of what state I'm currently in at any given time. In particular, whether I am having a waking experience or a dreaming experience. So if I'm having an experience like a fully immersive 3-4 dimensional, you know, multi-sensory experience, then I'm either awake, I'm either having a waking experience or I'm having a dreaming experience, pretty much, you know, and trying to be aware of which one I'm in at any given time. That would be probably my most primary daily practice out of anything. So I try and make a habit out of that. I try and make a habit out of contemplating the dream-like nature of waking experience, and I try and do random and frequent state tests, like you know, look at a digital clock, look away and look back a couple times, and just to see if it changes or if it starts acting crazy, like putting up letters and symbols and things like that. If it stays relatively constant, like maybe it'll flick to the next minute, but if it stays relatively constant, then I'm probably awake, probably having a waking experience. If it goes all crazy, you know, the first thing I'll go to is maybe I'm dreaming, instead of, oh, what the heck is wrong with my clock, you know? That's part of my personal training, that I've trained myself to go to that as the number one possible excuse. Is maybe it's because I'm dreaming, and that has served me well, because sometimes that habit will carry over into your dream world, your dream experience, and you'll have some kind of experience in your dream where it triggers you to do a state test. You're like, oh, that something's weird about that, let me do a state test, and then you'll see something crazy that indicates that you might be dreaming. And it's very important not to try and come up with an excuse for it. Like, I know when I first started doing lucid dreaming practice, I would do a state test within a dream and conclude that I was having a waking experience. And then I would wake up and I'd be like, oh, it was a dream and I was fooled by it. So, You can't be like, oh, maybe my watch is run out of batteries, or maybe it's broken, maybe I got it wet, or something like that. The first thing you have to go to is maybe it's because I'm dreaming. And then if you're at that level of awareness, then usually it turns into a lucid dream. So that's probably what I would say my daily practice is state testing and contemplating the dreamlike nature of the waking experience. So, like how similar the waking experience is to the dreaming experience, and the connections between those, is contemplating that just as I go about my day. So that is probably my main daily practice. If there, I don't do daily ritual like I used to. I'll do ritual still, but not like a regular daily one. If that's, that's usually what people are asking when they ask for my daily practice. But yeah, I do various different things, but not like, not something on a strict daily regimen like that. Other than state testing. That is something that I try and be very disciplined about and do every day, every single day. Because I find that if I don't do that every single day, then I stop having lucid dreams as often. Or, sometimes I go almost pretty much away if I don't keep up the practices. It's a lot of work, really, in a sense, to maintain that level of lucidity in your life. Not just your waking life, but your dreaming life as well. So that I find very important to keep up as a practice, a daily practice. So hopefully that helped. I gotta pop off here. Pretty much done. I don't have a lot of time left here. Okay, so Ethan is saying a message to Peter here, our petter. Oh, Peter, wear a copper or silver ring on your left ring finger, or some other metal band on your waist or ankle when you meditate. It will help you keep your energy in your body. Interesting. Yeah, that's something that is interesting to me too, because there's a lot of people, a lot of Western esotericists who are into Tantra, and what is it? Tantric? No, what's the word? I'm having a hard time getting the noun. The fire thing, that goes up your spine. Kundalini, that's the word, Kundalini. A lot of people do Kundalini practice where they raise energy like that, but in that practice, you basically shoot the energy at the top of your head. And some people jokingly refer to that as warming the room. What I like to do is create a circuit within my body and cycle it through, rather than bringing it from the bottom to the top and shooting it out. Bringing it back down the front, and then creating a circuit that it cycles through. It creates, and then it's moving in all parts of it all at the same time. I don't imagine it going up and then down and then up and then down. It's going up and down at the same time. So sometimes I'll start by trying to think of it going up and then down, but then the whole thing is moving all at the same time. And I try and keep up that sense of motion of that cycle going. And there's this book, this old book called The Secret of the Golden Flower, I think it's called, if I remember correctly. I think Carl Jung ended up putting a preface to that, writing a preface to that book. But there's a line in that book, and it's something along the lines of, the trick is to keep the energy cycling, and eventually it will crystallize. And I really like that line. I should probably memorize the actual wording of it, but I mean, that would be the English translation of it anyways. But I like that idea, because I like to think of the process as almost like a turning coal into diamond, creating this crystalline structure that is profound and powerful and strong. Ethan says the Chakra Workbook by Anna Voigt has a good connection to the actual ancient practices. Arsha Bodha Center, I believe, has a video called Kundalini Yoga as practiced by ancient yogis. That's quite good. Cool. Maybe I'll check that out. But thank you, everybody, for being part of this esoteric Insomniac Carstream episode 6. I really appreciate all of you and those who have watched this as an archive later on after the fact. Ethan says aloha. Thank you very much, Ethan. Miss B says thank you. You're very welcome. It's my pleasure, all of you, and thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate this community that's forming up around this channel, and all of you here who have interacted with me and challenged me and things like that. I really appreciate all of you. And until next time, everyone, stay lucid.